What is a constructor? So constructor is a special type of method that is used to initialize the objects. Mainly constructor is used to initialize the objects. If a constructor is invoked at the time of object creation, right? You have class object reference equal to new class name parenthesis semicolon. That is the new keyword after whatever is there. That's a constructor. So that means you are calling at the time of object creation. The constructor is called or invoked at the time of object creation. So basically it constructs the values. That's why you call name constructor. And it provides the data for objects like if it is a integer, you will get a 0 values. If you have a string or object, you have a null value, default values. So it constructs the values. What are the values you are providing in the object creation line? Yesterday we constructed the stockkeeper name. So it is constructing the value for that. So stockkeeper name variable, instance variable value. Then what are the rules for creating a constructor? So rules for creating a constructor is constructor name must be same as its class name. A constructor must have no explicit return type. So these are the 2 points, and also a Java constructor cannot be abstract, static, final, and synchronized. So constructor never going to use these keywords. You should not use in the constructor line abstract to, static to, final to, synchronized to, and all these keywords also you should not use inside the constructor. So these are the 3 points and you need to remember. So how can you identify the constructor in the class? Whatever the class name is there, same name you can find inside the class. So with the access modifier, class name, parenthesis, curly bracket, and logic, curly bracket close. That's the structure of any constructor. And constructor doesn't have any return type. There is no return type for the constructor, but method has a return type, right? Either void or without void. You have a return type. So, and what are the types of constructors? We have 2 types of constructors. Default constructor, we call no argument constructor. If no arguments are there, that's called default constructor. And second one, parameterized constructor, so which is a arguments constructor. So what is a default constructor? A constructor that have no parameter is known as a default constructor. So access modifier, class name, parenthesis, so logic plus statements. So that's the default constructor structure. You can see, you know what are the access modifiers? What are the access modifiers?
Default, protected, private, and public.
Right, so any one of them you can use here. And class name, you know you are creating a class. The same class name is your constructor name. So parenthesis, that no arguments in the parenthesis. Arguments you can give in the parenthesis only, right? And logic plus statements. For example, if you don't create any constructor in the class, compiler will automatically create one default constructor for every class. That means every class has a default constructor. Till now, we didn't create any constructors, right? Still, you are able to create object, and on that object line, you are calling the default constructor. So how is it possible? So if a class has a default constructor, while creating object for the class, no need to pass or no need to provide any parameter values. You don't need any parameter values. So you don't need any parameter values. So like this, class name, reference variable equal to new class name. See, this is the constructor. This is the default constructor. You can see here, default constructor, this part. So what is the purpose of default constructor? The default constructor purpose is it provides the default values for your instance variables. Like, if the instance variable type is integer, you will get a 0 default value. If it is a object reference variable, you declare globally, and then that you will get a null. And if it is a string, you will get a null only. So depending on the type of your instance variable, and it provides the default values. That's the purpose of default constructor. And parameterized constructor. A constructor that have parameters is known as a parameterized constructor. A constructor that have parameters is known as a parameterized constructor. Is known as a parameterized constructor. So, okay, you have a parameterized constructor in the class. So you can create like this: access modifier, class name, bracket data type, P1, comma, data type, P2, and so on. You how many parameters you want, you can declare. Yesterday we created a stockkeeper only one parameter. That's a parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor. So why do you need a parameterized constructor? So parameterized constructor is used to provide different values to the distinct object. Each object, you want to give a different values. Then you can go for the parameterized constructor. That's the purpose of any parameterization, right? You can pass different values for that parameters. If a class has a parameterized constructor, so while creating object for the class, need to provide parameter values. See this P1 value how to pass while creating object line, and P2 value, so P3 value.
So like the stockkeeper named John Doe yesterday is
Yeah,
basically this. We had to pass a parameter in when we were running the main method.
yeah, and when you're creating object,
Mm-hmm.
when you're creating object, so that's the no. parameter, you see, okay, a class can have more than one constructor. Which constructor you need, you can call. For that constructor, you can create object. You can call that constructor in the object line. Which constructor you want, you can create object. So that's the two types of constructors and how you can call constructor in the object line, how it is invoked. So in the object line. So constructor overloading in Java. Constructor overloading means, so it is one of the technique in which Java, in which a class can have multiple constructors that differ in parameter list and data type. That differ in parameter list and data type. So the compiler differentiates, right? The compiler differentiates these constructors by taking into account the number of parameters in the list and their type. Okay, so that's the constructor overloading means. So what is meant by that? It is saying constructor overloading. How can you say that? A class can have multiple constructors. Same class, you have multiple constructors. Then how it will be differentiated? Constructor name and class name same, right? Then how can you differentiate one of the other? By parameter list and the data type of the parameter. So understand here, same method overloading also will come. If you understand the constructor overloading, you can frame the definition for method overloading also. Constructor overloading means a class can have multiple constructors with different parameter list and data type. So the compiler differentiate these constructors by taking into an account of parameters and their type. That's a constructor overloading means. So what is the difference between constructor and a method? So what is the difference between constructor and a method? Is there so same or different? Yeah, it's both are different. Those are not same. So constructor is used to initialize the state of an object. And method is used to expose the behavior of an object. Constructor must not have a return type and method must have a return type. Constructor is invoked implicitly and method is invoked explicitly. So the Java compiler provides default constructor if you don't have any constructor in the class. Method is not provided by compiler in any case. You don't have a default method, something like that in the class. You have to create explicitly. And also you have to invoke the method explicitly. Constructor name must be same as the class name. Method name may or may not be same as class name. So that's the difference between a constructor and a method. Okay, any questions here?
Good so far.
Yeah. So let me show you the constructor overloading example in Selenium. So even in Java also you have that. Not only in Selenium, but let's go and see examples. Many examples you have. So a class can have multiple constructors. So go to API docs and arg.openkey.selenium. And you can see cookie class. Cookie class. See that how many constructors here? Cookie, same as a class name, right? This is the class name. Same as a class name. So, but these are the two parameters. And this one, 3 parameters. And this one, 4 parameters. 5 and 6. So, and 7. And these are 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 parameters. But so you can see the difference between all this. Name is same. Only parameter list 2 and count is changing. So that's how it is differentiated. So that's how it is so differentiated. So here 2 parameters if you give, it will call this constructor. If you give 3 parameters, it will call this constructor. If you give these parameters, it will call this constructor. So it won't go to these constructors. That is the constructor. So overloading means a class can have multiple constructors. A class can have multiple constructors. So okay. So that's the constructor examples. And even you have so many. If you go to, even if you see, in the driver, you can see any one of them. So Chrome driver, you can see this is the class, right? This class also has many constructors. See, public class Chrome driver extends Chromium driver. That's fine. That is, I'll tell you that. See the constructor. Default constructor, parameterized constructor with the 2 parameters, parameterized constructor with the 3 parameters, parameterized constructor and 1 parameter. Here also 1 parameter. Here also 1 parameter. How it will be differentiated?
Based on the actual parameters inside.
The parameter data type. Here parameter name is service. What is this parameter data type?
Home driver service.
That's a class.
So
what is this parameter data type?
Chrome options.
Chrome options. So this is the data type. These are all classes. See here, no primitives, all non-primitives only they used as a data type. Right? This is the parameter syntax what? Data type, parameter name, right? So Chrome driver service is the class. Chrome options is another class. So class and that parameter name. So this is the how see multiple constructors in the same class. Whichever you want, you can call it. Whichever you want, you can call that constructors. Okay. So this is all about constructors. Anywhere it's easy to recognize. What is the class name? First, you know the class name, right? Same class name and constructor name is same. That's a rule I told you already. You must follow those rules. You cannot give lowercase, this C lowercase you cannot give, D lowercase you cannot give. Whatever the name for class it is there, same name you have to give for constructor. Okay. So let's go and create one of our class. So I'll create a constructor overloading also, both default constructor and parameterized constructor I'll create. August. Okay, let's take August. That's the latest one. I think is there. Yeah. So here I have, let me copy this. Okay. So I'm just creating one student class. Okay. So student has ID, name, branch, age. These are the properties. So these are the instance variables. These are instance variables. And now see first default constructor I'm creating. So what is the default constructor syntax? Access modifier, class name, parenthesis. So logic. See access modifier I have taken private. And class name is student, parenthesis, curly bracket. So system.out.println and default constructor without arguments. Default constructor with the private access modifier. So private access modifier we use. And this is the default constructor. This is the default constructor. So this is the default constructor. And again, another one, protected. So access modifier place, I'm putting a protected. Student. So int ID, string name. Int ID, string name. See, two parameterized constructor I created. So now, this ID and this ID is same. And this name is same. Are these same? These variables are same. These are parameters. These are instance variables. Both are different. So these are parameters, and these are instance variables. So parameters is nothing but a local variables. And these are instance variables. Both memories are different.
Mhm.
Now to represent the instance variable in your method or a constructor inside, so you have to use this dot id when if there is a conflict between parameter and instance variable. Now here conflict, right?
Mhm.
So parameter name same and instance variable name same. Then how you are representing this instance variable? With this keyword. This dot id will represent the instance variable, and the right side one will represent the parameter. And same, this dot name will represent the instance variable, and right side this one will represent the parameter. Next, public student int id, comma, string name, comma, string branch, int age. So now can you observe here? So what, this is another constructor. Then what is the difference between this one and this one, and this one and this one? What is the difference?
More parameters.
Yeah, here no parameters, here you have parameters. So name is same. So here more parameters. And the difference between this and this is more number of parameters. But I already written a logic for these two, right?
Mhm.
These two I have written already logic. Do I need to write again this code? No need. You can call this constructor in this constructor. How can you call? So as I mentioned, second point I'm telling now about this keyword. To invoke one constructor in another constructor in the same class. So you can use this keyword. Now this keyword is going to call this constructor here, because I am passing these parameters. Even you can call this constructor also, but I am passing this parenthesis id and name. So this means this will represent this constructor. Then remaining things I'm implementing this dot branch equal to branch, this dot is equal to is. So that's how you can differentiate that. And see, this is the very important point you need to catch. So how can you call one constructor in another constructor of same class? So what is the answer? Using this keyword. Always this as a parameters? Not required. You are calling this constructor parameterized constructor. That's why this as a parameter values. But if you want to call this, do we need to pass the parameters? No need. Directly you can call with this. Clear?
Yes,
If I want to call default, is it fine? Or I need to pass the parameters?
it's fine.
Yeah, only one constructor you can call, not multiple constructors. That's why
Mhm.
it is throwing error. You can observe that.
Mhm.
Only one constructor you can call, not multiple constructors. So, and this is the how you are calling one constructor in another constructor. Now I'm creating an instance method. This is the instance method. So public void student details. So system.out.println student name, student ID. So this dot ID, student branch, this dot branch. So here I didn't write this. It's okay, same. If you don't write also internally, it will call this dot name. Okay.
Mhm.
If you write this dot ID, fine. If you don't write also internally, it will call this dot name on. This dot branch, this dot age. So these are the student details method, instance method. Now you can call. First create object for student class with a default constructor. student S1 equal to new student and S1 dot student details. S1 dot student details. And see here, I am not passing any parameter. So what are the values you will get for this? This instance variables have what values now? Can you tell me when you execute this one?
You should have nothing, right?
Now what values it will be there? For ID, name, branch.
0, null.
0, null, 0. Default values, right? I told you this default constructor will construct the default values. So the default values will be constructed. So now execute that. See, it will gives the default values. See, null, 0, null, 0. So name, so first name, right? That's why null. Then ID, 0. Then branch, null. So A is 0. Then, so it will pass the second one. So I'm calling two parameterized constructor. Student S2 equal to new student. See the ID I am passing. This one, I'm calling this constructor ID and name I am passing. So ID and name I passed. Now what are the values it will print for you? This object reference. So name and ID values will be printed, but remaining things are 0 only, 0 and null. Now, with 4 parameterized constructor, you are calling the student S3 equal to new student. So the ID, name, branch, and age. Then S3 dot student details. So it will print all the values. So this is the how to call. See, each constructor when you are calling, so that constructor related details only you are going to pass. Okay. So now this will call this constructor, but this one will call this constructor. And and this one will call this constructor. Okay. So that's the constructor and constructor overloading. Now this is the constructor overloading. How can you say this is the constructor overloading? This class has a multiple constructors with same name but different arguments. That's the constructor means. Okay. Any questions?
Good so far.
Okay. So let's join back and we'll discuss on the